in a world where there's going to be a shrinking pie of cases, I wanted to do both.
Welcome to Personal Injury Mastermind. I'm your host, Chris Stryer, founder and CEO of Rankings.io, the legal marketing company the best firms hire when they want the rankings traffic cases other law firm marketing agencies can't deliver. Each week, you get insights and wisdom from some of the best in the industry. And speaking of the best, I've got some exciting news to share with you. This September at PimCon in Scottsdale, Arizona, we'll be joined by none other than my favorite comedian, David Spade. You know him from classic movies like Tommy Boy and Joe Dirt, and of course his unforgettable run on Saturday Night Live. It's going to be a blast having Mr. Joe Dirt with us, so get your ticket to PimCon today. All right, let's dive in. When it comes to navigating personal injury law in Michigan, few match Steven Gursten's expertise. A Michigan Lawyer of the Year, Steven has recovered the top auto accident and truck accident verdicts in the state time and time again. His elite firm, Michigan Auto Law, has over 21 attorneys in over 5 locations, and they've been serving injury victims in the state for over 50 years. But Steven isn't just looking back at his firm's past accomplishments. With a sharp eye on the future, he's identified a massive shift on the horizon that could disrupt the personal injury industry. New safety tech could cut accident cases around 50% within just a few short years, a reality that could leave many firms in the dust. In this eye-opening episode, Steven helps us get ahead of the curve with a future-proof game plan for marketing and business development. You'll learn how he is diversifying into lucrative, underserved niche practice areas before the competition floods in. He shares his firsthand experiences building a standout brand presence to reinforce his firm's authority as the go-to specialist. Steven is cementing his foundation to weather any storm, and you should too. His forward-thinking insights will ensure you don't just survive this industry upheaval, but thrive in it. I last spoke to Steven in 2021, and in the past 3 years, he's been busy.
I guess the biggest thing is I've now joined the world of branding. I'm now doing some marketing, which I had never, ever done before. We have a mutual friend, I think, Gary Sarner, and I started doing radio in Michigan. And I'd always heard that there was power in multi-channel marketing. Turns out it's true. So for years and years and years, I looked at possibly doing TV. And to be honest, I could never figure out how to make it work, only because, as your listeners probably in every other market in America know, in Michigan, in Metro Detroit, there's 24 law firms that do TV. And I'm like, how can you, in a 15 or 30-second spot, be able to make yourself stand out and be remarkable, just be different from 24 other law firms that are also on TV? And I could never figure it out, right? So, I mean, I guess you could just outspend everybody and do the Netflix approach, and be one of the top 2 or 3 people on TV and just outspend everybody. That's one way of doing it, but I don't think that's very cost effective. And then I discovered radio. And what was interesting about radio was, while there are 24 law firms in Michigan that in Metro Detroit alone that do TV, there were only 4 that were on the radio. So even in a world as ultra competitive as personal injury is, it was pretty much as close to blue ocean as you could get, because there just wasn't a lot of competition. There's over 1 million people listening to the radio in Metro Detroit. So it was a great opportunity, and it really has worked very well hand in hand with all the things we talked about in our first episode, which is all the SEO and all the things we're doing with the web. And our numbers have really dramatically increased, which has, by the way, then led to me hiring 7 more lawyers. So God help me, I'm now at 25 lawyers. But it's going really well. That's a big new development.
That is incredible.
People always ask, how do you track, a branding campaign? And one of the cool things that we did is, for my Michigan Auto law firm, I also had a domain autolaw.com. So all of our radio ads are under autolaw.com, not michiganautolaw.com. But what we do is we have a 301 redirect that goes from auto law to Michigan Auto Law. So we're actually able to track in real time every single day how many people we get from radio that are coming to our website. So it's just a really fun, interesting new world for me.
There's different evolutions of a personal injury law firm, right? There's the bootstrappers that start and they have a limited budget and they're doing the things that don't scale. And then you have the mid-sized firm, and then they have a seasoned firm that's got some big cases and a bigger marketing budget. How has that shifted were you all direct response and then now you shifted, a percentage to brand? Like what's kind of like the split, not the dollars, but the split look like?
Do you mind if I take a tangential way of answering that? Because I think it's important for your listeners, if it's okay. So I think if people listen to our first podcast, they probably would have heard me say at one time, I'm never going to be, doing branding and marketing and everything other than just SEO. I was very comfortable having very high profit margins and getting a lot of referrals from other lawyers and having an inbound way of getting clients through the website. Because obviously every dollar you don't spend on marketing and advertising is a dollar that you keep as profit. What changed for me is I think most lawyers don't really understand what's coming in the next couple of years. For example, one of the things that's coming is there are changes that are already in place that almost nobody knows about, but that can cut the number of auto accident cases that we have literally in half. So, one of the things, for example, is Pete Buttigieg at the Department of Transportation issued what's called a proposed rulemaking last year, and it is currently being evaluated. And they're going to issue a final determination next month, actually in April. But it was about whether they should have mandatory automatic emergency braking in all vehicles that are made in the United States. What's interesting is the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety says that if every vehicle in America has front end crash avoidance technology like automatic emergency braking, which is what we're talking about, they believe it's going to cut the number of auto accident cases by about 50% in as early as 3 years.
This seismic shift is being driven by cutting edge safety features like automatic emergency braking that can prevent front end collisions before they happen. As these technologies infiltrate more and more vehicles on the road, the pool of available auto accident cases for PI attorneys could be slashed in half within just a few years. The time to proactively adapt is now.
That means most personal injury lawyers are walking around today and they have no clue that potentially they could lose 50% of their auto accident cases in the next 3 years. Now, what's interesting is as an auto accident and truck accident lawyer myself, I actually think it's going to be higher than 50% because I look at my cases and, I would say when I look at all the rear enders at red lights and, people stopped in traffic on freeways and people that get hit by someone who's texting and driving, I mean, I think that might be closer to 70% of my cases. It's going to be here faster than people think. And here's the thing that people don't realize is even if the rule doesn't pass next month, it's already here. When my son turned 16, I bought him a car that has a very modestly priced car that has front end crash avoidance, which means that my son literally, I mean, it's almost impossible for him to rear end somebody because the car will stop itself. So the technology is already here and it's already starting to infiltrate the market, which I have to emphasize is a great thing. I mean, it's going to make the world a safer place and a better place. But for our audience, as a world of personal injury lawyers, I don't think anybody's thinking about what our world is going to look like, where you could potentially lose 50% of your entire office in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years. So that is what brought me to your question now, which is, what do you do when this is coming? And the way I looked at it, I only had two choices. One is, what are the ways that I could then start to be able to grab a bigger slice of what will soon be a shrinking pie of cases? Because there's only so many auto accident cases every month. And then if that number starts to shrink because of these wonderful changes with safety technology, how can you grab a larger share of a shrinking pie? And the second thing is now the time to start exploring other areas of practices, other areas of law that are much less competitive, much more lucrative, much more blue ocean, so to speak. The best time to plant a tree is yesterday, but the second best time to plant a tree is today. And I'd much rather be entering new areas of practice now than try and do it, let's say, 5 years from now, when everybody's already losing their heads and desperate and everyone's trying to do it all at once. So those are the two big changes, and that's what led me to, for example, start branding. and using our friend Gary Sarner, who's by the way been terrific to work with.
Now you got the marketers and private equity trying to compete for the smaller slices. So that's also an issue, right?
Well, it's all tied in together. I mean, think about the irony of it, that at this moment in time, you know, March 7, 2024, when we're recording this together, you have right now more lawyers and more money chasing what is very soon to be a quickly shrinking pool of cases. And yeah, I mean, it's shocking. You have these law firms that are getting 9-figure hedge fund loans to do single event marketing, the way they used to do in mass torts. You've got all this money. You do have massive consolidation. You have all these factors. And I think most lawyers still have their head in the sands and think this isn't going to affect them. But it all ties them together. And that's, again, why, for me at least, the decision was pretty easy. In a world where there's going to be a shrinking pie of cases, I wanted to do both. So I finally made the plunge into marketing and branding, especially, which has been wonderful. I mean, before I started this, every lawyer and every judge in Michigan knew who I was, but the public sure didn't. And and the other thing is, for people who are listening to this is where someone like you comes in handy, right? I mean, there are, and it's going to change a little bit depending on what state you're in and what city, but working with someone like you, it's not very hard. You do some keyword research, look at what areas of law have huge search volume, and then look and see what the competition is like in your area. And there will be tremendous opportunities. And the question is, do you want to explore those opportunities now when you can do it? Or do you want to do it 5 years from now when you have to do it? I'd rather do it now.
So first of all, my mind was immediately going to, Michigan premises liability law.com or premiseslaw.com as your next niche specialization. And you're already familiar, with the investigators and the things that go into the more challenges for trucking and having to get that evidence and preserve that evidence. And, it lends itself to that skill set of premises and some slip and falls,
Absolutely.
things like that. I came to this a little bit different. Okay, so I saw the enhancement of technology, but I'm going to really wear my super SEO nerd hat here. For my competitors listening here, they're going to just think this is really weird. But what I do is I track the content that's created on the biggest personal injury law firm site to see what cases they're interested in. So, for example, take my friends over at Morgan & Morgan, right? Dan and those individuals. I was tracking the creation of their new content, and they had an abundance of premises content, right? So shifting away from the auto. And, I won't name some other firms, but I started to see the diversification into other areas. And then I kind of came to a similar, solution or findings that you did, but kind of in a different way. I think it's so interesting. I've always wondered, right? The auto cases, you got the asynchronous bets, especially the buses, the garbage trucks, the semis, the 18-wheelers. Someone gets a slip and fall, and it's the liability is clearly there, and they get a head injury. I've always just wondered why those cases weren't pursued more.
Well, funny you should say all that, because one of my new 4 law firms that I've started is a slip and fall law firm. Because, hey, in a world where there might be autonomous vehicles in 10 years and all this safety technology, there sadly will still be people getting very seriously injured in premises liability cases. Let me pose a question to you, if you don't mind.
Sure, let's do it.
So I'm curious. So, and by the way, for your audience, I promise you none of this was rehearsed, or this is all totally on the fly. But I think people who are your clients have a huge advantage over law firms like Morgan & Morgan. This is going to be a gross oversimplification, but tell me if you think there's some truth to this. So the ability of a smaller law firm to go very targeted and very niche and create these microsites that are 100% strictly targeted to, let's say, whatever area law it is. What you're doing is you're letting Google or other search engines know that when they're returning search results for someone who's looking for, let's say, the best slip and fall lawyer, or the best work comp lawyer, or the best dog bite lawyer, or best QTAN lawyer, whatever it is. If you can create a website that is 100 pages of content, all the links are very, very relevant and authoritative, and you're demonstrating your expertise, your authority, your trust, your subject matter mastery. Unlike a gigantic website like Morgan and Morgan that is advertising for probably, if we add in the class actions and mass torts, maybe 100 different areas, you're creating a very easy way for not just the public who might be looking for the very best lawyer in that area, but also for the search engines. And I think you have a huge advantage by doing that, by digging deep, not wide, and creating these additional websites.
1000%. And I'll articulate this a little differently. So you have a huge advantage with the name Michigan Auto Law, right? When it comes to relevance, you have Michigan and you have auto. So whenever, and most of the time, and you see the Google local profiles right now, they're all something personal injury lawyers or something accident injury lawyers, right? So now in 2024, people have understood that advantage as it comes to relevancy and keyword rankings. So the individual listening that goes and gets a DBA or a real entity name for brain injury lawyer, nursing home neglect attorney, they're number one in local maps with no problems, without having to get 2,000 reviews in some of the major markets. You could do that with very few reviews, just because of how Google wants to send relevancy to a consumer query. And if your entity name has that, you stand at a significant advantage. So I couldn't agree more. There's also the advantages of being smaller and moving and not having all the infrastructure and headcount to change. But I think as Google evolves, right, I've said this so often, my audience is probably like, oh, here he goes again, right? 3 trillion web pages in 2016. Now we have AI. So how are you going to stand out with creating Me Too content? And the answer is you're not. So if you create these niche sites and you can go deeper on topics, then you automatically stand an advantage in the search results.
I agree. And there's so much opportunity out there, and people don't realize that. So, God, about 10 years ago now, I started another law firm, and it was a workers' comp law firm. And what happened was, actually, it's funny. I remember exactly when it was. I was watching the Detroit Lions lose another game 10 years ago. All they did was lose until this year. And I remember being pretty bored. And I just got on Moz, back then. And I started putting in different areas of law. And I was just curious. I just wanted to see, like, what's the search traffic like for various areas of law. And I remember at the time, I was absolutely shocked when I saw how much search traffic there was for workers' comp. So what I then did was I took those search keywords and I put them into Google and I looked at what came up. And honestly, it was a bunch of really, really awful, crappy websites. Because the reality is, like, most, comp has been so bad for so long. You don't really have younger lawyers. A lot of them are older yellow page lawyers. The point is you had a bunch of ugly websites with very few links, poor content. I remember looking at it all and saying, you know what, I bet I could create a website and in 6 months I would own workers' comp in Michigan. And I was wrong, because it didn't take 6 months. It actually took 2 months. That's how quick it was. And, we've now quadrupled in size. We are the largest workers' comp law firm in Michigan. And the funny thing is, everyone says you can't make money in comp. Well, guess what? If you're doing it the way lawyers have always done it in comp, where you're doing mass volume and you can't return phone calls and you're going crazy, then you're right, you probably can't. But if you cherry pick, so right now our want rate is about 10%, which means that out of every 100 cases, calls we get, we probably take 10. But you know what? Those 10 cases are really, really great cases. And, we're just loading up on 6-figure and even 7-figure settlements that really were kind of unheard of in the field of workers' comp. And, right now we like I said, we can't hire comp lawyers fast enough. But, I took that same formula and I applied it to slip and falls, for example, and it's been working out really well. And if in a world one day the number of auto accidents is slashed in half, I know I'll be very, very busy, and still have very viable, great cases in other areas.
I think that's very smart. I want to play the business owner mindset back to you. Like, what went through your head in the difference, right? You have the Michigan auto law, you've got the Michigan comp site versus maybe Gursten law, right? And just putting one main brand entity on one site and doing all the practice areas. Is it the trust component? Is it that?
So I think a lot of lawyers make this mistake. So if let's say, God forbid, you needed a cardiologist or whatever it is, would you go to a doctor that advertises for 10 completely different areas of medicine? That says they do family practice, derm, and 10 completely other areas? Or would you pick the very best heart doctor that you could possibly find? And I don't think people are different. So I used to be GurstenLaw.com, and I changed it to Michigan Auto Law. And I remember when I did that, the lawyers here, to be honest, went a little bit crazy, because they thought, oh, I'll never get a dog bite case again, or I'll never get a slip and fall again. And A, that proved to be absolutely not true. But B, again, I don't think people are different when it comes to lawyers than they would be if they're trying to find the very best doctor. Listen, that's a little bit of an oversimplification. We both understand there's plenty of people out there that are going to drive by a billboard, see a stupid billboard, and call that lawyer, and that's it, and do zero research. But guess what? There's a huge swath now of our population, and it's getting bigger every day, that if they're going to spend 10 hours researching a TV or a car, they're going to spend 10 hours reading reviews and researching lawyers. And they're going to want, if it's a truck accident, they're going to spend time, they're going to be your researcher type clients, but they tend to be your best clients anyways. They tend to be higher earners, bigger cases, more sophisticated. And they're going to spend that time trying to find the very best lawyer in that area of expertise.
And that's where you hear brand too comes into play, where they know and they trust the individual, right? I just talked to Ben Whitley from in North Carolina, and he phrased something that Schillinger says, you get what you ask for, right? So if you have the work comp site, it's going to attract itself to work comp, and when you just put the billboard up that just says injured or just accident, it's not specific enough. You're not asking for what you want. So I think it's the perception of expertise too. So you're not just a litigator, a very savvy marketer. When I was doing my research, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you had the highest verdict in the state for like 18 years.
So I am very fortunate. I personally had the largest auto accident settlement and truck accident settlement in Michigan. I've had the largest verdict for an auto or truck accident case more times than anyone else in the state. Every year, basically, and it's frankly, it's part of our marketing, right? It's part of what differentiates us and what makes us remarkable from the 3,000 other personal injury law firms there are in Michigan. But it's really, really important to me that we can say that we are the very best for auto and trucking cases in Michigan. And if we're going to say that, then it's really important that you be able to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. Because, going back to our researchers, I hate to say it, but it's funny. If I were to do a pie chart, I would say there's like about a third of my cases where it's just amazing. They will spend hours reading reviews. And I get people that call every week, every day, just from reading our reviews. And they want someone that they could trust, that's going to be calling them back, they're going to feel that they're protected. And that's where reviews become so incredibly important. There's maybe another 1/3 of that pie that are basically, I'm going to say, the clients that just want results. Who's going to get me the biggest dollars? I don't want to lose those clients because those are great cases too. So it's really important for that 1/3 of the pie that we be able to say objectively, truthfully, based upon the year-end compilations of the verdicts and settlements every year from Michigan Lawyers Weekly and from Verdict Search, that we have the best results every single year. And, I make that, that's really important to us. So you got to try cases.
So you have that expertise, right, in these different areas, and you can get the big numbers, which lends itself to peer referrals and positioning different, right? It's how you're distinctive. I've always wondered, myself as a marketer, not an attorney, the pre-lit shops that don't litigate. To me, that model is broken. I don't understand why you would want to try to do those in-house and staff up all the labor, even if it's non-attorneys, paralegals, even if it's nearshoring, as opposed to getting maximum value from litigators such as yourself. It lends itself to different marketing initiative. Can you speak to that? Why are there so many of these pre-lit shops, these the quote unquote mills that exist? Like, how do they to get to this position?
Yeah. So first, we just have to acknowledge the obvious, which is they will never ever maximize or come close to full settlement value because they are pre-suit mills. It's a business and it's based on numbers. So they know exactly what their cost per case is. They know exactly how many cases are going to drop out, let's say at the end of every month from the numbers they sign. They know what their average settlement is. So, for example, and I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that Lerner and Rowe, for example, their average settlement, not average fee, but average settlement per case is about $7,000 to $9,000. So, if their cost per acquisition is, let's say, $1,000, and they're doing this over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases, then you could see where that becomes profitable. And I think in our world of consolidation, if you are going to be the 800-pound gorilla in a market and you're going to be doing mass volume and loading up your lawyers with 300 plus cases in pre-suit, and that is your business model, obviously it's terrible for the client. It's terrible for their experience, every aspect of their experience with the civil justice system. It's terrible for just about everything, but it's very profitable for the law firm, which is why there are mills and there is that business model. I just felt like it was nothing I ever wanted to do. I really believe the best lawyers actually go into this profession because they actually like people, they care, and they want to help people make a difference. I still believe that. I know that I think we sound naive sometimes because trust me, we have our share of sociopaths in our profession too. But I really think the best lawyers really like people and want to help them. And if that's the case, you do need to be able to push cases to trial and maximize results. And also, sometimes it's okay to sacrifice. I'm channeling a little bit of Seth Godin here, but sometimes total profitability should not be the end all be all. If it means that you're sacrificing being able to call clients back at night and not even be able to know what your files are, it's okay. In other words, to have a lower case count, but counterintuitively have all those cases be worth more because you're able to spend more time on those cases and you're being proactive, not reactive. And my whole business model is based on the premise that by doing that, by taking the road less traveled, by handling fewer cases but working them up like crazy, that you will actually make more money that way than you will from being a big mill.
Let me do one counter to that and ask you your thoughts on this. Okay, so first, I know you really pride yourself on client service, and I think speaking to really caring for the human, right? That's just part of it. Like that's just your nature, your values. If you do select less cases, there's a higher case selection threshold. You said 10 out of the work comp. How do you balance that with getting reviews and the importance there from from an LSA and a MAPS perspective? And then also, what's the way that the correct, so first the reviews, and then the second, the EQ based turn down or the referral out because you're not going to take their case. So how do you balance those two?
So I'll be honest. It is a tightrope you have to walk, and it is not always easy. It's funny. If you look at our reviews, I think we have 5 1 stars. One of them was from a competitor lawyer who I got disbarred, by the way, but that's a whole nother story. Don't mess with me. But the other 4 are actually people who just got mad we didn't take their case. So they were never a client. They just were really, really upset that we didn't, we couldn't help them. And that will happen when you're a public facing business dealing with the public. The only thing you can do is understand that's going to happen and get more reviews. And the idea is that you could provide such great service and create such a connection with your clients that you have raving fans, apostles of your business, that are not only going out there and leaving these wonderful reviews that are very heartfelt and very real, but the best defense to a 1-star review is getting a whole bunch of 5 stars. So the way you handle the people that you have to unfortunately reject is 2 things. One, we always ask, if it's, for example, a chat form or a lead form, if we're not able to help you, do we have your permission to try and find a lawyer who can? So we're creating a permission structure to at least refer them to another lawyer for a second opinion. And often, not only are we doing a service for the client, but we're also then getting a referral fee 1.5 years down the road from someone that we referred the case to. So that's nice. The other thing is we do spend a fortune on training our intake. And, we still have, so I have 5 full-time intake people, and I'll get to why in a moment. But every month, each one of them has a call randomly selected that is then graded by an intake specialist. And, the idea is, are they treating these people with caring and empathy? Are they really listening? And if they have to turn down the case, I always use the expression, are they killing with kindness? Where by the end, the person is almost thanking them for us turning away their case. But that is not something that people intuitively have. It's a skill that has to be taught and learned. And if you're a business owner, you better invest in that, right? So that's really important, because that's the only protection you have from, let's say someone that gets angry that, in a way it's a compliment, right? They read you on Google. They so want you to be their lawyer that they get so upset if you can't help them that they actually go and leave a 1-star because they're that disappointed. But you better be able to explain it. And as you also be able to get on Google and, leave a response to that 1-star saying, hey, we are very sorry. I know you were disappointed that we couldn't take your case. I wish we could help everybody that contacts us, but unfortunately we can't. And when you leave a response like that, because a lot of people, the first thing they do is they want to read the 1-stars, not the 5-stars. When you leave a couple responses like that to a 1-star, it makes them want you even more.
Yeah, I'm the perfect example. That's the first thing I do before an Amazon product. Oh, sort to 1. Because they have a ton of 5s. I'm like, I want to see how they handled the bad situations and what actually went wrong here. Steven, this is amazing. I really enjoy the forward thinking about the industry. This is a unique conversation that we don't have enough. And it's been awesome having you on the show again. I'd be up for a third, maybe in the future. Maybe we get a little time, maybe after this case in the next month or so. But for our audience that wants to connect with you, being the top of the top litigator in Michigan, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. The best way is just to contact me through my website, which is michiganautolaw.com. And I'm very honored, and I always return every phone call. So thank you, Chris.
All right, y'all. There's a lot to take in from today's episode. You know what time it is. Let's go over the pinpoints, a recap of the key takeaways from today's episode. Get ahead of the curve. Cars are getting safer, which could mean fewer auto cases in the future. That's a massive disruption coming down the pike that PI attorneys can't ignore. So let's look at it in a marketing perspective. The smart play is getting ahead of the curve by strategically diversifying into niche practice areas now. I'm talking dedicated websites and content honing in on specific niches with high demand but low competition. Smaller firms actually have an edge here by going hyper niche. With a focused, authoritative presence, the leads will roll in.
I don't think anybody's thinking about what our world is going to look like, where you could potentially lose 50% of your entire office in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years. So that is what brought me to your question now, which is, what do you do when this is coming?
SEO is just the beginning. As your firm grows, you need to move beyond direct response. Building a distinctive brand reputation on public awareness is critical to staying top of mind and keeping the lead pipeline flowing. Steven tapped into radio advertising. That's just one example of getting exposure beyond online marketing. Getting creative with branding channels like radio allows you to amplify your niche expertise. A standout brand conveys trust and specialization, attracting high-value cases. As the pool of available cases shrinks, you'll want the airtight branding to differentiate and capture maximum market share.
I finally made the plunge into marketing and branding especially, which has been wonderful. I mean, before I started this, every lawyer and every judge in Michigan knew who I was, but the public sure didn't.
Play offense. Having a first mover advantage lets you cement your firm as the go-to specialist before others catch up. Do your research to identify those opportunities. Look for keywords with significant search volume. Then look to see how many firms are already competing for those cases. High search volume and low competition is your beacon to your blue ocean.
The best time to plant a tree is yesterday, but the second best time to plant a tree is today. And I'd much rather be entering new areas of practice now than trying to do it, let's say, 5 years from now, when everybody's already losing their heads and desperate, and everyone's trying to do it all at once.
For more information about Steven, check out the show notes. Before you go, do me a solid and smash that follow button to subscribe. I'd sincerely appreciate it. And you won't want to miss out on another episode of Personal Injury Mastermind with me, Chris Stryer, founder and CEO of Rankings.io. All right, everybody, thanks for hanging out. See you next time. I'm out.